Elisa Davis wiped down the sticky countertop for the fourth time that hour, her lower back aching from a double shift that started at noon and wouldn't end until closing at 2 a.m. Friday nights were always brutal. Waves of construction workers cashing paychecks, college kids slumming it for authenticity, and regulars who'd been planted on the same stools since before Elisa was born. She was 28, and tired in a way that sleep couldn't fix. Tired of smelling like gin at the end of every shift. Tired of her landlord's passive-aggressive notes about the water bill. Tired of opening her wallet and seeing $17 in a grocery store loyalty card. But nursing school wasn't going to pay for itself, and this job, soul-crushing as it was, kept the lights on in the apartment she shared with Mara, her best friend since high school. "Lisa, you seeing this?" Mara's voice cut through the din, sharp with mischief. She was perched at the end of the bar, off duty tonight, nursing a vodka cranberry and scrolling through her phone with the dedication of the investigative journalist. Corner booth, black suit, looks like he just walked off a mob movie set. Elisa glanced up, squinting through the haze of cigarette smoke that the ventilation system never quite cleared. Corner booth. She spotted him immediately, not because he was loud or flashy, but because he was the opposite. Still, controlled. A man in his mid-30s with dark hair, cropped close, sharp jaw, shoulders that filled out a tailored black suit, like it was custom-made. Which it probably was. He sat alone, no phone, no drink, just watching the room with the kind of awareness that made Elisa's instincts prickle. "So?" Elisa said, returning to her glass polishing. "We get guys in suits sometimes." "Not like that." Mara leaned in, eyes gleaming. I could buy this bar and bulldoze it by Monday suit. I've killed a man and slept fine after face." "You've been watching too much true crime," Elisa muttered, but she looked again. And okay, Mara wasn't entirely wrong. There was something about him, an intensity that didn't match the casual setting, like a wolf trying to blend in with dogs. His eyes, dark and unreadable, swept the room in intervals. Not nervous, just aware. $50 says you won't go kiss him, Mara announced, loud enough that their two other friends, Jenna and Chris, squeezed into the booth beside her, perked up, like meerkats. Elisa froze mid-polish. "Absolutely not." "Come on," Jenna chimed in, grinning. "When's the last time you did something crazy?" "I work 2 jobs and eat ramen 4 nights a week. My whole life is crazy." "That's just sad," Chris said, not unkindly. "We mean fun crazy, impulsive crazy, kiss a hot stranger and feel alive crazy." Elisa looked at the 3 of them, her chosen family, the women who'd held her hair back during her worst breakup, who'd fronted her rent when her dad drank away the money she'd loaned him, who made poverty feel less lonely. They were grinning like idiots, and God, when was the last time she'd done something just for the story? $50, she confirmed. Cash, right now. Mara slapped 2 20s and a 10 on the bar. Elisa stared at the money. That was groceries. That was the electric bill. That was one less shift she'd have to pick up next week. She downed the shot of whiskey someone had abandoned, felt the burn steady her nerves, and untied her apron. "If I get thrown out, you're covering my tips." The walk across the bar felt longer than it should have. Her sneakers stuck slightly to the floor, and the noise around her seemed to dim as she approached the corner booth. Up close, he was even more intimidating. Not in an obvious way, but in the way a blade is intimidating. Sleek, precise, dangerous if mishandled. He looked up as she stopped at his table. His eyes were gray, she realized. Slate gray, like a Chicago sky before a storm. And they locked onto hers with a focus that made her forget, for a second, why she was there. "Hi," she said, surprised her voice came out steady. I'm going to do something really stupid, and I apologize in advance. His eyebrow lifted, just barely. Should I be concerned? Depends on your sense of humor. And then, before her brain could catch up with her body, Elisa leaned down and kissed him. She'd meant it to be quick, performative, a peck to win the bet and retreat. But the moment her lips touched his, something shifted. He didn't pull back, didn't shove her away or bark at her to get lost. Instead, his hand came up, slow, deliberate, and cupped the back of her neck, and he kissed her back. Really kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't polite. It was the kind of kiss that tasted like hunger and something darker, something Elisa couldn't name but felt in her bones. His mouth was warm and sure, and for 5 impossible seconds, the bar disappeared. There was no noise, no crowd, no $50 bet. Just his hand in her hair, and the shocking heat of his mouth, and the way her heart kicked against her ribs like it was trying to escape. When she pulled back, breathless, his eyes were still on hers, unreadable. But there was something in them now, a crack in the armor, a flicker of surprise. "That was the stupid thing?" he asked, voice low and rough. "Yeah," Elisa managed, taking a step back on shaky legs. "That was it." She turned and walked back to the bar, feeling his gaze on her the entire way. Her friends exploded into laughter and applause, and Mara shoved the $50 into her hand, but Elisa barely registered it. Her lips still tingled, her pulse still raced. She'd kissed strangers before, drunken mistakes, forgettable moments. This didn't feel forgettable. She risked one glance back at the corner booth. He was still watching her. And this time, there was the faintest hint of a smile on his face. Elisa turned away, heart pounding, and tried to convince herself it was just adrenaline, just a stupid dare, just a kiss. But 3 hours later, when her shift finally ended and she stepped into the freezing January air, she found him leaning against the brick wall outside, hands in his pockets, breath misting in the cold. "You dropped this," he said, holding out her wallet. Elisa's hand flew to her back pocket. Empty. She must have... When did she... "I didn't steal it," he added, reading her hesitation. "You left it on my table when you made your exit." She took the wallet, checking inside. Everything was there. Cash, ID, the grocery loyalty card. "Thanks," she said carefully. He nodded. Didn't move. "I'm Louis," he said after a moment. "Elisa." Silence stretched between them, broken only by the distant wail of a siren and the muffled thump of bass from inside the bar. The streetlight above them flickered, casting his face in alternating shadow and gold. "That kiss," he said quietly, eyes steady on hers. Was it really just for a bet? Elisa should have said yes, should have laughed it off, thanked him again for the wallet, and gone home to her shoebox apartment. But something about the way he asked, like the answer actually mattered, made her tell the truth. "It started that way," she admitted. "But it didn't end that way." His expression didn't change, but his shoulders relaxed, just slightly. "There's a diner 2 blocks from here," Louis said. "Open all night. Terrible coffee, but the pancakes are good. It's 1 a.m. "I know." Elisa looked at him, really looked, at the expensive suit that didn't belong in this neighborhood, at the controlled stillness that screamed danger, at the eyes that held something she recognized because she'd seen it in her own mirror. Exhaustion. Bone-deep, soul-tired exhaustion. She should have said no. "1 cup of coffee," she heard herself say. "And if the pancakes are terrible, you're buying." The smile that crossed his face was small, but real. Deal. They walked side by side through the empty streets, past boarded-up storefronts and flickering neon signs, and Elisa tried to ignore the fact that for the first time in years, she didn't feel tired. She felt awake. The diner was called Stella's, a relic from the 70s with cracked red vinyl booths and a jukebox that hadn't worked since the Clinton administration. The waitress, 60-something with reading glasses on a chain, didn't even blink when they walked in at 1:30 a.m., just pointed them toward a booth by the window and promised coffee. When I get around to it. Elisa slid into the booth, the vinyl cold through her jeans. Louis sat across from her, and in the fluorescent lighting, she could see him more clearly. The sharp line of his jaw, the faint scar above his left eyebrow, the way his eyes tracked the two other customers in the diner, a truck driver at the counter, a teenager asleep in a corner booth, before settling back on her. "So," Elisa said, wrapping her hands around the coffee mug the waitress had grudgingly delivered. "Do you always wait outside bars for women who assault you? That's what you'd call it? Assault? I kissed you without asking. Pretty sure that violates some kind of social contract." Louis's mouth twitched, almost a smile. I didn't mind. The coffee was, as promised, terrible. Burnt and thin, like someone had waved a bean over hot water and called it a day. Elisa drank it anyway. The diner was warm, blessedly warm, and after 8 hours on her feet, sitting down felt like a small miracle. "What do you do, Louis?" she asked, watching him over the rim of her mug. "For work." He didn't answer right away. His fingers drummed once against the table. A tell, she realized. The first crack in his composure. "Security consulting," he said finally. "Risk assessment. Corporate protection." It wasn't technically a lie, Elisa would realize later. Just an extremely edited version of the truth. That why you dress like you're going to a funeral? It's a suit. It's a very expensive suit. I've bartended long enough to know the difference between Men's Warehouse and whatever that is. Tom Ford. Jesus. Elisa laughed, shaking her head. I'm sitting here in a t-shirt that says, "Drink local," and jeans with a hole in the knee. And you're wearing a suit that costs more than my rent. Does that bother you? She considered. No. Just weird. You don't exactly blend in around here. I know. So, why come to a dive bar in Southside? No offense, but you look like you should be in some rooftop lounge downtown, drinking scotch that's older than me. Louis's expression shifted. Something guarded sliding into place. Sometimes I get tired of those places. Tired of people who only talk to you because of what you can do for them. Elisa understood that. God, did she understand that? Every shift at the bar was a performance. Smile at the handsy regular who tips well. Laugh at the unfunny joke. Pretend you don't notice. When someone's staring at your ass. Everyone wanted something. And what do you think I want? She asked quietly. His eyes met hers. Steady. Searching. I don't know yet. That's why I'm here. The pancakes arrived. Massive. Drowning in syrup. Exactly as promised. They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes, and Elisa tried to reconcile the man across from her with the intensity she'd felt during that kiss. He was careful, she noticed. Methodical. Cut his pancakes into precise squares. Wiped his mouth after every bite. Even the way he held his fork was controlled. Your turn, Louis said, breaking the silence. What's a woman who kisses strangers for $50 doing working double shifts at Murphy's? Murphy's. He knew the name of the bar, which meant he'd been there before, or he'd looked it up, filed that information away. Saving for nursing school, Elisa said, deciding honesty was easier than evasion. I start next fall if I can cover tuition. The bar pays bills. Barely, but it pays. Why nursing? Why not? That's not an answer. Elisa set down her fork, looked at her hands, rough from bleach and bar soap, nails bitten short. When I was 16, my mom had a stroke. Minor one, but scary. I was alone with her when it happened, and I didn't know what to do. Just froze. Paramedics came, and this one woman, I don't even remember her name. She stayed with me the whole time, held my hand in the ambulance, explained everything so I wouldn't be scared. And I thought, I want to be that person, the one who stays. Louis didn't say anything for a long moment. Then, your mom okay now? She died 2 years later. Different stroke. I wasn't there that time either. I'm sorry. Don't be. She got 2 extra years. That's something. His hand moved across the table, slow, telegraphed, and covered hers. The touch was warm, solid, and Elisa didn't pull away. They stayed like that for 5, maybe 10 seconds. Then Louis withdrew, reaching for his coffee like nothing had happened. But something had happened. Elisa felt it in her chest, a loosening she hadn't expected. What about you? She asked. You grow up here? West Side, long time ago. Family? His jaw tightened. No. One word. A door slamming shut. Elisa recognized the tone. She'd used it herself when people asked about her dad, the drunk who'd burned through 3 marriages and currently lived in a trailer park downstate, calling twice a year to ask for money. Okay, she said simply, not pushing. Louis looked at her, something like surprise flickering in his eyes, like he'd expected her to pry. You don't want to know? He asked. I figure you'll tell me if you want to, or you won't. Either way, I'm not going to interrogate you over bad pancakes. They're not that bad. Louis, I've tasted better pancakes at a gas station. That earned her a real smile. Small, but genuine. It transformed his face, softened the hard edges, made him look younger. Almost boyish. Fair enough, he conceded. They talked until 4 a.m., about nothing and everything. Elisa told him about Mara, about their apartment with the radiator that clanked like a ghost, about the regular at the bar who left prayer cards instead of tips. Louis told her about a restaurant on the north side that served the best Italian beef in the city, about the time he'd accidentally locked himself out of his car in a snowstorm, about how he couldn't stand the taste of cilantro. He didn't tell her where he lived. Didn't mention friends or family or anything that mattered. But Elisa didn't mind. She'd spent enough years around liars to recognize when someone was protecting themselves versus when they were playing games. Louis was the former. When they finally left the diner, the sky was starting to lighten. That thin gray pre-dawn that made the city look almost peaceful. Louis walked her to the L station, hands in his pockets, shoulders slightly hunched against the cold. Can I see you? Again? He asked as they stopped at the entrance. Elisa's breath misted in the frozen air. Every rational part of her brain was screaming warnings. He was too smooth, too polished, too careful with his words. Men like him didn't wander into Southside bars and have heart-to-hearts with bartenders unless they wanted something. But he'd waited 3 hours just to return her wallet. He'd listened when she talked. He'd smiled like it hurt, like he'd forgotten how. Yeah, she said. You can. Louis pulled out his phone, sleek, expensive, probably cost more than her laptop, and handed it to her. She typed in her number, handed it back. I work Tuesday through Saturday, she said. Afternoons and evenings, so if you text, I might not answer right away. I'll wait. He said it simply, like it was a fact. Like waiting for her was the easiest thing in the world. Elisa turned toward the turnstile, then stopped, looked back. Louis? Yeah? Thanks, for the pancakes, and for not being weird about the kiss. His expression softened. Elisa? Yeah? Thank you for kissing me." She laughed, surprised, genuine, and disappeared down the stairs into the station. But as the train pulled away, carrying her toward home and her unmade bed and the 3 hours of sleep she'd get before her morning shift at the diner she actually worked at, Elisa couldn't stop replaying those words. Thank you for kissing me. Like it was a gift. Like she'd given him something precious without meaning. 2. Her phone buzzed as she climbed the stairs to her apartment. A text from an unknown number. Unknown. Made it home safe? She saved the contact. Louis. Just Louis. Elisa. Yeah. You? Louis. Yeah. Louis. Sleep well, Elisa. She stood in the hallway outside her apartment, staring at the screen, and felt something dangerous bloom in her chest. Hope. Louis texted her the next morning. Just a simple good morning. No expectations, no pressure. Elisa responded between customers at her day job. A different diner. This one on the West Loop where she pulled the breakfast shift 3 days a week. They texted throughout the day. Small things. He sent her a photo of a dog he saw on the street. Some kind of husky mix with mismatched eyes. She sent him a picture of the alphabet soup a customer ordered, the letters accidentally spelling out doom. Louis. That's a sign. Elisa. Of what? Louis. That you should quit and never eat alphabet soup again. Elisa. Solid advice from a security consultant. It was easy. Too easy. Elisa had dated enough to know that the beginning was always easy. Everyone on their best behavior, carefully curated versions of themselves. But there was something different about Louis. He didn't perform. Didn't try to impress her with stories of his job or his money or whatever else men usually led with. He just talked to her, asked questions, remembered details. On Tuesday, he asked if she wanted to get dinner. Real dinner, he specified. Not a diner at 2 a.m. They met at a small Italian place in Little Italy, the kind of restaurant where the owner knew everyone's name and the menu was handwritten on a chalkboard. Louis was already there when she arrived, wearing dark jeans and a charcoal sweater that probably cost more than her entire wardrobe. He stood when she approached the table, an old-fashioned gesture that made her heart stumble. You're early, Elisa said, sliding into the chair he held out for her. Habit. Control thing? Something like, that. The food was incredible. Homemade pasta, sauce that tasted like someone's grandmother had been cooking it all day, bread so warm it steamed when she tore it apart. They shared a bottle of wine, red, Italian, a name Elisa couldn't pronounce, and Louis told her about growing up on the West Side, back when it was rougher than it was now. My mom worked 3 jobs, he said, twirling pasta around his fork with practiced ease. Cleaning houses during the day, waitressing at night, and weekend shifts at a laundromat. I barely saw her, but every Sunday, no matter how tired she was, she'd make dinner. Real dinner. Pasta from scratch, sauce simmering for hours. She said it was important, that we eat together, that we remember we were a family. His voice was even, but Elisa heard the past tense, heard the weight behind it. How old were you when she died? Elisa asked gently. Louis set down his fork. 12. I'm sorry. It was a long time ago, but time didn't erase some things. Elisa knew that. Her mom had been gone 6 years, and she still sometimes reached for the phone to call her before remembering. What happened? She asked, then immediately regretted it. Sorry, you don't have to. She was killed, Louis said quietly, eyes fixed on his wine glass. Wrong place, wrong time. Caught in crossfire during a dispute between 2 organizations. She was walking home from her shift, didn't even see it coming. Elisa's throat tightened. Jesus, Louis. Yeah. He looked up, meeting her eyes. So when you asked why I don't have family, that's why. After she died, I went into the system. Foster care. Aged out at 18. Haven't had family since. The restaurant noise, clinking silverware, murmured conversations, someone laughing at the bar, faded into background static. Elisa reached across the table and took his hand. He didn't pull away. His fingers closed around hers, grip almost too tight, like he was holding on to keep from drifting. I'm sorry, she said again. Inadequate words for an inadequate world. It made me who I am, Louis said, and there was something dark in his voice now, something that made Elisa's instincts prickle. Made me understand how the world really works, that nobody protects you except yourself, that power is the only thing that matters. I don't believe that, Elisa said quietly. No? No. I think people matter. Connection matters. My mom died broke, but she had friends at her funeral who cried like they'd lost a sister. That's worth more than power. Louis studied her for a long moment, something unreadable in his expression. Then he lifted her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles. A gesture so unexpectedly tender that Elisa's breath caught. Maybe you're right, he murmured against her skin. They left the restaurant an hour later, stepped out into the January cold, and Louis asked if she wanted to walk for a bit. They wandered through the neighborhood, past row houses with Christmas, lights still up, past corner stores and shuttered shops, their breath misting in the frozen air. Can I ask you something? Elisa said, hands shoved deep in her coat pockets. Always. Why me? Louis stopped walking, turned to face her under a streetlight, snowflakes just starting to fall, catching in his dark hair. What do you mean? I mean, Elisa gestured vaguely. You're clearly successful. You wear suits that cost thousands of dollars. You could walk into any upscale bar in this city and have your pick of women who actually have their shit together. So why are you here, with a bartender who eats ramen and shares a one-bedroom with her best friend? Louis was quiet for a long moment. Then, because you kissed me like I was just a man. Not a job title. Not a bank account. Just me. And I can't remember the last time someone looked at me and saw just me. Elisa's chest ached. Louis. I know it sounds pathetic. It doesn't. It sounds lonely. He laughed, a rough, humorless sound. Yeah, that too. Elisa stepped closer, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to look at him, close enough to see the snowflakes melting on his eyelashes. You're not alone right now, she said softly. Louis's hand came up, cupping her face with a gentleness that contradicted everything about him. His thumb brushed her cheekbone, and Elisa leaned into the touch without thinking. Can I kiss you? He asked. And the fact that he asked, that he waited for permission, made something inside her crumble. Yes. This kiss was different from the first. Slower. Deeper. He kissed her like he was memorizing the feel of her mouth, the taste of wine on her lips, the way she sighed against him when his other hand settled on her waist. There was hunger in it, yes, but also something else. Something that felt like relief. Like coming home after a long, brutal journey. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Louis rested his forehead against hers. I want to see you again, he said, as much as you'll let me. I work most nights. Then I'll take whenever you're free. Mornings, afternoons, 3 a.m. pancakes. I don't care. Elisa smiled against his mouth. You're intense, you know that? I've been told. They saw each other 5 times in the next 2 weeks. Coffee before her morning shift, lunch on her day off, a movie at the old theater that still showed classics. They watched Casablanca and Louis whispered the dialogue along with the actors, knowing every line. Late night walks through neighborhoods that probably weren't safe, but Elisa felt safer with Louis than she ever had alone. He still didn't tell her where he lived, still kept certain details vague. But he showed up when he said he would. Texted her good morning and good night. Listened when she ranted about difficult customers or her landlord's latest ridiculous demand. And slowly, carefully, Elisa felt herself falling. It was Mara who voiced the concern Elisa had been trying to ignore. "I'm just saying," Mara said, sprawled on their couch while Elisa got ready for another date. "You don't actually know anything about this guy. Where does he live? Where does he work, specifically? Has he introduced you to anyone in his life? It's only been 2 weeks. 2 weeks where you've seen him almost every day. That's serious, Lise. And you're serious about him. I can tell." Elisa paused, mascara wand halfway to her eye. "Is that bad?" "I don't know. Maybe. He's just... There's something about him that makes me nervous. He's too smooth, too careful, like he's hiding something big. Everyone's hiding something. Not like this." Mara sat up, expression serious. "Promise me you'll be careful. I love that you're happy, but I also love you not getting hurt. Or worse." "Worse? I don't know. He just gives me dangerous vibes, like I could see him on the news for something bad." Elisa laughed, but it sounded forced even to her own ears. "You're being paranoid." "Maybe, but promise me anyway." "I promise." But as Elisa left the apartment and met Louis outside, as he smiled and pulled her into a kiss that tasted like mint and made her forget every concern, she wondered if Mara was right. She wondered what Louis was hiding, and she wondered if she'd care, even when she found out. The truth came on a Wednesday night, delivered not by Louis but by the 10 o'clock news playing on the TV above the bar. Elisa was wiping down glasses, only half paying attention to the screen, when she heard the name. Louis Montana, underboss of the Carbone crime family, was seen leaving the federal courthouse today following a hearing related to ongoing RICO investigations. Montana, 35, has long been suspected of involvement in... The glass slipped from Elisa's hand, shattered on the floor behind the bar. On the screen, Louis walked down courthouse steps in that same black suit, flanked by lawyers in equally expensive suits. His face was impassive, cold in a way she'd never seen. The camera zoomed in as a reporter shoved a microphone toward him. "Mr. Montana, do you have any comment on the allegations?" Louis didn't even glance at the reporter. Just kept walking, climbed into a black SUV, and disappeared. The segment moved on to sports. Elisa stood frozen, glass shards glittering at her feet, her hands shaking. Underboss, crime family, RICO investigations. She pulled out her phone with numb fingers. Googled Louis Montana, Chicago. The results were extensive. Articles about the Carbone organization, one of Chicago's most powerful crime syndicates. Photos of Louis at various events, always in the background, always watching. A Wikipedia page that listed his alleged involvement in everything from money laundering to extortion to... She had to read it twice. Suspected connections to 3 unsolved homicides. Alleged. Suspected. Never proven. But the pattern was there, clear as a smoking gun. "Lise, you okay?" Mara appeared at her elbow, eyes wide. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Elisa showed her the phone. Watched Mara's face go pale. "Holy shit," Mara whispered. "Holy shit. That's him? That's your Louis?" "Apparently. Lisa, I need to go." Elisa was already untying her apron, hands still shaking. "Cover for me. Please, tell Danny I'm sick." "Where are you going?" "To get answers." She didn't have Louis's address. But she had his number, and she texted him one word. Where? His response came 30 seconds later. I'll come to you. No, I'm coming to you. Where are you? A pause. Then an address on the north side, Lincoln Park. Of course. Where else would a mob underboss live? The Uber ride took 20 minutes through light traffic. Elisa spent the entire time staring at her phone, rereading articles, looking at photos. Louis shaking hands with a city councilman. Louis at a charity gala, emotionless in a tuxedo. Louis in the background of a crime scene photo, just visible over a detective's shoulder. The building was exactly what she expected. Luxury high-rise, doorman in uniform, gleaming lobby with marble floors and abstract art. The kind of place where monthly rent probably exceeded her yearly income. The doorman recognized Louis's name, made a call, waved her toward the elevator. Penthouse. Top floor. Of course it was the penthouse. The elevator ride felt eternal. Elisa watched the numbers climb, 10, 15, 20, 25, and tried to organize her thoughts into something coherent. But coherent was impossible when your boyfriend of 2 weeks turned out to be a literal mobster. The elevator opened directly into a foyer. Louis was waiting. He looked different here. Still wearing the dark jeans and sweater from earlier, but his posture was different, guarded. That careful control back in place, armor locked tight. You saw the news, he said. Not a question. You're a mobster. Elisa's voice sounded distant to her own ears. An actual, literal mobster. Underboss. That's second in command, right? Of a crime family. Yes. Just, yes. No excuses. No explanations. Just confirmation of her worst fear. Were you ever going to tell me? Louis's jaw tightened. Eventually. When I figured out how. How about, hi, I'm Louis. I work for the mafia? That would have been a start. Would you have kept seeing me if I'd told you that first night? Elisa stopped. Honest answer. No. She would have smiled politely, declined the pancakes, and blocked his number. That's not the point. It's exactly the point. Louis stepped closer, and Elisa had to force herself not to retreat. I know what I am. I know what people think when they hear my name. And for once in my fucking life, I wanted to just be Louis, not Montana, not the underboss, just a guy having coffee with a woman who makes him feel human. You lied to me. I omitted. There's a difference. That's bullshit, and you know it. Louis exhaled slowly. You're right. It is bullshit. I should have told you. I'm sorry. The apology caught her off guard. Elisa had expected defensiveness, anger, maybe even threats. Not this quiet admission of guilt. What do you actually do? She asked. And don't tell me security consulting. I manage the family's business interests. Legitimate ones, mostly. Real estate, restaurants, construction contracts. I handle negotiations, resolve disputes, protect our assets. Protect. That's a nice way of saying, yes. His eyes met hers, unflinching. Sometimes it means exactly what you think it means. Elisa's stomach turned. Have you killed people? Silence. Long and terrible. Yes, Louis said finally. The apartment suddenly felt too small, too warm. Elisa wrapped her arms around herself, trying to process. This was the man who'd held her hand over pancakes, who'd kissed her in the snow, who'd told her about his mother's Sunday dinners with something like grief in his voice. This was also a man who'd killed people. I should go, she heard herself say. Elisa, I need to think. I can't do this right now. She turned toward the elevator, but Louis's voice stopped her. My mother died because of men like me, he said quietly. Men who thought violence was the answer to every problem. men who didn't care about collateral damage. I was 12 years old, and I watched her bleed out on a sidewalk because two idiots couldn't resolve a territory dispute without guns. Elisa turned back slowly. Louis was standing by the window now, silhouetted against the Chicago skyline, hands shoved in his pockets. I joined the Carbone family when I was 17, he continued, voice flat. Figured if I couldn't beat the system, I'd master it. Become so powerful that nobody could hurt me again. And I did. I climbed the ranks, made myself indispensable, became the man everyone feared. He turned to face her. And then you kissed me in a bar, and for the first time in 23 years, I remembered what it felt like to be just Louis. Not Montana, not the underboss, just a man who could eat pancakes and talk about stupid shit and feel something other than empty. Elisa's eyes burned. Louis, I want out, he said, and the raw honesty in his voice cracked something in her chest. I've wanted out for years, but I didn't know how. You don't just leave this life. It doesn't work that way. But since I met you, I've been trying to figure it out. How to extract myself. How to build something clean. Why? Because I'm tired. He said it, simply. Like exhaustion was its own confession. I'm tired of hurting people. Tired of looking over my shoulder. Tired of being the monster in every story. And when I'm with you, I'm not tired. I'm just me. Elisa stood frozen in the foyer, caught between her head and her heart. Her head was screaming at her to leave, to run as far and fast as possible from this dangerous man and his dangerous life. But her heart, traitorous, stupid thing, remembered the gentleness in his touch. The way he'd asked permission before kissing her. The grief in his voice when he talked about his mother. I don't know if I can do this, she said honestly. I don't know if I'm strong enough for this world. I would never let it touch you. You can't promise that. I can try. Elisa closed her eyes. Thought about her mother, who'd loved a man who couldn't change, who'd waited and hoped and finally died disappointed. Thought about all the nights she'd sworn she'd never be that woman. Never love someone knowing they might destroy her. But Louis wasn't asking her to save him. He was asking for a chance to save himself. If you're serious about getting out, Elisa said, opening her eyes, then show me. Don't just talk about it. Actually do it. It's not that simple. I know it's not simple, but I need to see you try, because I can't. Her voice cracked. I can't watch someone I care about choose violence over and over while promising they'll change eventually. I did that with my father. I won't do it again. Louis crossed the distance between them in 3 strides, took her face in his hands with a tenderness that made her heart ache. I will try, he said fiercely. I swear to you I will try. Okay. Elisa covered his hands with hers. Then I'll stay, for now. But Louis, if this goes bad, if you pull me into something I can't escape, I won't. I'll keep you separate, safe. I promise. He kissed her then, desperate and deep, like he was afraid she'd disappear. And Elisa kissed him back, knowing she was making a dangerous choice, maybe even a stupid one. But she'd spent her whole life playing it safe, working double shifts, eating ramen, surviving but never really living. Maybe it was time to risk everything. Maybe Louis was worth it. For 3 weeks, things were good. Better than good. Louis was making visible changes, stepping back from certain meetings, delegating more to his subordinates, spending less time at the social club that served as the family's unofficial headquarters. He told Elisa he was building an exit strategy, talking to his lawyer about legitimate business ventures he could transition into once he was out. Elisa wanted to believe him, and most days she did. He took her to dinner at restaurants where the staff knew his name, but treated him with respect, not fear. He walked her home after her late shifts, hands in his pockets, telling her about the Italian beef place he was thinking of buying. Completely legitimate, he'd said. Just a restaurant. Good food, no strings attached. You really think they'll let you walk away? Elisa had asked. If I do it right? If I make myself less valuable than the trouble of keeping me? It sounded reasonable. It sounded possible. And then Marcus Carbone summoned Louis to a meeting. Elisa didn't know about the meeting until after. Louis showed up at her apartment at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday, and she knew immediately something was wrong. His jaw was tight, eyes hard in a way she hadn't seen since the night she'd confronted him about his identity. What happened? She asked, pulling him inside. Mara was at her boyfriend's place, so the apartment was empty. Small mercy. Louis sat on their sagging couch, elbows on his knees, head in his hands. Marcus knows, he said finally. Elisa's blood went cold. Knows what? About you. About me wanting out. Louis looked up, and there was something close to fear in his eyes. Someone's been watching me, reporting back. They know. I've been pulling away. What did he say? That I'm making a mistake. That the family took me in when I had nothing, and I owe them loyalty. That men who leave don't just leave, they become liabilities. Is that a threat? It's Marcus. Everything's a threat, even when he's smiling. Elisa sat beside him, took his hand. His fingers were cold. What are we going to do? We? Louis turned to her, something fierce in his expression. There's no we in this, Elisa. This is my problem, my mess. I won't let it touch you. Too late, I'm already involved. No, you're not. He stood abruptly, started pacing the small living room like a caged animal. I never should have dragged you into this. I was selfish. I wanted something good in my life, and I didn't think about what it would cost you. Louis, you should end this. Right now. Tell me to leave and never come back. It's safer for you. Elisa stood, grabbed his arm, forced him to stop pacing. Do you want to leave? No, he said, immediately. God, no. But what I want doesn't matter. Your safety matters. Then fight for it. Elisa moved closer, close enough to feel the tension radiating off him. You said you wanted out, so get out. Actually do it, instead of letting them scare you back in line. You don't understand how this works. Then explain it to me. Louis exhaled shakily. If I leave wrong, they kill me. Simple as that. And if they think you're the reason I'm leaving, they might kill you too. Just to make a point. That's how this world operates, Elisa. Nobody gets a happy ending. Bullshit. Elisa's voice was sharper than she intended. You're not some tragic hero doomed to suffering. You're a man making choices. So choose differently. It's not that easy. I know it's not easy. She was almost yelling now. Nothing worth doing is easy. You think I wanted to work 2 jobs while watching my friends graduate college and start careers? You think I wanted to spend my 20s barely scraping by? But I did it because I chose something better than what I had. So choose, Louis. Choose me, or choose them. But stop pretending you don't have a choice. He stared at her for a long moment. Then, without warning, he pulled her into a kiss that tasted like desperation and something close to hope. When he broke away, his forehead rested against hers, both of them breathing hard. I choose you, he whispered. I'll figure it out. I swear. But figuring it out proved harder than either of them anticipated. The pressure from Marcus intensified. Louis was summoned to more meetings. Consultations, he called them. But Elisa saw the strain in his face when he came back. Saw the way his hands shook slightly when he thought she wasn't looking. He's testing me, Louis explained one night. Giving me jobs to prove my loyalty. I can't refuse without making it worse. What kind of jobs? Lewis's silence was answer enough. Elisa tried not to think about what he was doing when he wasn't with her. Tried not to imagine the violence he was enacting to buy time for their escape. But the not knowing ate at her, created a distance between them that hadn't been there before. And then, 3 days later, everything fell apart. Elisa was closing the bar, wiping down the last tables, when 2 men walked in. She looked up, ready to say they were closed, and the words died in her throat. They weren't customers. Both wore dark suits, similar to Lewis's but cheaper, harder. One was tall and thin, with a scar running down his left cheek. The other was shorter, stockier, with dead eyes that made Elisa's skin crawl. "We're closed," she managed, keeping her voice steady. "We're not here for drinks," the tall one said. His voice was smooth, polite, which somehow made it worse. "You're Elisa Davis." Not a question. A statement. "Who's asking?" "Friends of Louis Montana." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Mr. Carbone would like to have a conversation with you." "I don't know who that is." "Yes, you do." The shorter one moved closer, and Elisa saw the bulge under his jacket. A gun. Jesus Christ, he had a gun. And lying wastes everyone's time. So let's make this easy. You come with us, have a chat with Mr. Carbone, and everyone walks away happy. "And if I refuse?" The tall one's smile widened. "Then we stop being polite." Elisa's hand was already in her pocket, fingers closing around her phone. She managed to hit Lewis's speed dial before the shorter man grabbed her wrist. "I don't think so," he said, twisting until she gasped and dropped the phone. It clattered to the floor, call connected but microphone down. "Don't make this difficult," the tall one said, almost gently. "Mr. Carbone just wants to talk. No one's going to hurt you." Elisa didn't believe that for a second, but she also didn't see another option. The bar was empty. The street outside was dark, and these men had guns. "Fine," she said, lifting her chin. "I'll talk to him." They walked her to a black sedan parked illegally in front of the bar. The shorter one opened the back door, gestured for her to get in. Elisa climbed inside, heart hammering, and tried to remember everything Lewis had told her about his world. Show no fear. Don't volunteer information. Don't make threats you can't back up. The drive took 15 minutes. They pulled up to a social club on the west side. Lombardi's, the sign said, though the windows were dark. The tall one opened her door, helped her out with a courtesy. That would have been charming in any other context. Inside, the club smelled like cigars and old leather. A handful of men sat at tables, playing cards, drinking espresso. They looked up when Elisa entered, faces curious but not hostile. Like she was an interesting puzzle, not a person. "Mr. Carbone is in the back," the tall one said, guiding her toward a door marked private. The office behind the door was surprisingly tasteful. Dark wood furniture, expensive art on the walls, a massive desk, with nothing on it except a single lamp. And behind the desk sat Marcus Carbone. He was older than Elisa expected. Mid-50s, gray at the temples, wearing a navy suit that probably cost more than her car. He had kind eyes, grandfatherly, which terrified her more than any scar or dead stare could. "Miss Davis," he said warmly, gesturing to the chair across from him. "Please sit." "Thank you, Vincent Anthony. You can wait outside." The 2 men left, closed the door. Elisa was alone with Marcus Carbone, and every instinct screamed at her to run. Instead, she sat. "Would you like something to drink?" Marcus asked. "Coffee? Water?" "I'm fine." "Straight to business, then. I appreciate that." He leaned back in his chair, steepled his fingers. "I understand you've been seeing Louis Montana." "Yes. He's a good man, loyal, smart, one of my most valuable associates. Marcus's smile was gentle. But lately, he's been distracted, making uncharacteristic decisions. And I think you're the reason why. Elisa said nothing. I'm not blaming you, Marcus continued. Love makes men do foolish things. I was young once, I understand. But Louis has responsibilities, obligations to this family, and those obligations don't disappear just because he's infatuated. He wants out, Elisa said quietly, and you should let him go. Marcus's smile didn't waver. Men don't leave this life, Miss Davis. Surely Louis has explained that to you. Then change the rules. I'm afraid it's not that simple. Why not? He's given you years. He's earned the right to walk away. Has he? Marcus leaned forward. Or has he simply grown tired of the sacrifices required? Because that's what concerns me. Louis is acting like a man who's forgotten where he came from, who's forgotten that this family gave him everything when he had nothing. You gave him violence and blood money. I gave him purpose, Marcus corrected, voice still gentle but with steel underneath. I gave him family when the world had abandoned him. And now he wants to throw that away for a bartender he's known for a month. The contempt in that last word stung more than Elisa wanted to admit. I love him, she said, surprised by her own certainty. And he loves me. That should mean something. It means he's compromised. Marcus stood, walked around the desk, which puts both of you in danger. So I'm going to make you an offer, Miss Davis. End your relationship with Louis, cleanly. Tell him you can't handle his world. Walk away. And in return, I ensure your safety. You go back to your life, and we leave you alone. And if I refuse? Marcus's expression shifted. Not angry, just disappointed. Like she'd failed a test she didn't know she was taking. Then I can't guarantee what happens next. Louis is valuable to me, but even valuable men can be replaced if they become liabilities. And you, Miss Davis, are making him a liability. The threat was clear. Refuse, and Louis died. Maybe she did too. Elisa stood on eye, shaking legs. I need to think about it. You have 24 hours. Marcus returned to his desk, sat down. Vincent will drive you home. Good evening, Miss Davis. She was escorted out the same way she came in. The ride back to her apartment passed in a blur. When they dropped her off, she ran inside, locked every lock, and immediately called Louis. He answered on the first ring. Elisa, Jesus Christ, are you okay? I got your call, heard voices, tried to call you back, but they took me to see Marcus, she said, voice hollow. Silence. Then, I'm coming over. No, don't. I think they might be watching. I don't care. Louis, listen to me. Elisa pressed her palm against the wall, trying to steady herself. He gave me an ultimatum. Leave you, or he can't guarantee our safety. Another long silence. Then leave me, Louis said finally. Do it, Elisa. Walk away. No. Elisa. I said no. She was crying now, couldn't stop. I'm not leaving you. We're figuring this out. Together. There's no way out that doesn't end with someone dead. Then we make a new way. Louis' laugh was bitter. You still think this has a happy ending? I think we deserve one. Elisa wiped her eyes angrily. Don't we deserve one? I don't know anymore, he whispered. And that scared her more than anything Marcus had said. Louis showed up at her apartment 2 hours later despite her warnings. He looked wrecked, tie loosened, shirt wrinkled, dark circles under his eyes like he hadn't slept in days. Maybe he hadn't. Elisa let him in without a word. He pulled her into his arms immediately, held her so tight she could barely breathe, face buried in her hair. I'm sorry, he said into her neck. I'm so fucking sorry. I should have known they'd come after you. I should have protected you better. You can't protect me from everything. I should be able to. He pulled back, hands framing her face. That's my job. Keeping you safe is the only thing that matters. Louis, we need a real plan. Not just hoping Marcus changes his mind. An actual exit strategy. He nodded slowly. I know. I've been talking to my lawyer. There might be a way. What way? Louis hesitated. Then, I give the FBI what they want. Information, testimony, enough to build a RICO case against the family. In exchange, they give me immunity and protection for both of us. Elisa's stomach dropped. You'd testify against them. It's the only leverage I have. The only thing valuable enough that the government would protect us. They'll kill you. The family. They'll kill you for that. Not if we disappear first. Witness protection. New identities. New city. We start over completely. It sounded impossible. Like something from a movie, not real life. But the desperate hope in Louis' eyes told her he was serious. What about your businesses? Your life here? None of it matters without you. He said it simply, like it was the most obvious truth in the world. I'll walk away from everything if it means keeping you alive. Elisa thought about what that meant. Leaving Chicago, the only city she'd ever known. Leaving Mara, her friends, her jobs. Starting over with new names, new histories, always looking over their shoulders. When? She asked. My lawyer is setting up a meeting with the FBI. Could be next week, could be tomorrow. But once I start talking, there's no going back. The family will know immediately. Then we need to be ready to run. Louis nodded. Pack a bag, just essentials. Keep it hidden. And Elisa, don't tell anyone. Not Mara, not anyone. The fewer people who know, the safer everyone is. Okay. He kissed her then, soft and desperate. I love you. I don't think I've said it out loud, but I do. I love you more than I've loved anything. Elisa's throat tightened. I love you too. Even knowing what I am, what I've done. I love you because you're trying to be different. Because you chose me over everything you've built. That's who you are, Louis. Not the underboss. Not Montana. You're the man who's brave enough to start over. They held each other in the dark apartment, and for a moment, Elisa let herself believe it would work. That they'd escape. That somewhere, in some distant city, they'd build a quiet life. Normal. Safe. But 3 days later, the plan imploded. Elisa was at her morning shift when Louis called. She almost didn't answer. Breakfast rush, dozen tables demanding coffee and eggs. But something made her step outside into the January cold. Louis? They know. His voice was tight, controlled panic. Someone leaked. Marcus knows I've been talking to the FBI. How? Doesn't matter. What matters is I have maybe 12 hours before they come for me. Maybe less. Elisa's hands went numb. What do we do? You run, right now. Leave work, go home, grab your bag, and get to Union Station. There's a train to Milwaukee at noon. Buy a ticket, get on it, and don't look back. What about you? I'll meet you there. I have to handle something first. Louis, don't. I have to, Elisa. I have to make sure they can't follow us. That means tying up loose ends. She knew what that meant, knew what loose ends implied in his world. Promise me you won't kill anyone, she said. Silence. Louis, promise me. I promise I'll do whatever it takes to keep you safe. That's not what I asked. It's the best I can give you. His voice softened. Please, baby, just get on that train. I'll find you. I swear. The line went dead. Elisa stood on the sidewalk, phone clutched in her frozen hand, trying to decide if she believed him, if he'd really meet her in Milwaukee, or if this was goodbye disguised as a plan. She went home, grabbed the duffel bag she'd hidden in her closet, stuffed in extra clothes, her laptop, the photo of her mom she kept on the nightstand, left a note for Mara that said only, "Had to leave town. Family emergency. I'm okay. I love you." It felt like a lie even as she wrote it. Union Station was crowded. Tourists, commuters, families heading to Wisconsin for late winter breaks. Elisa bought her ticket with cash, kept her head down, tried to blend in. The train didn't leave for another hour. She found a bench near the departure gate and waited. 55 minutes, 40, 30. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number, unknown. Train station, main entrance. Come alone. Not Lewis's number. Elisa's blood went cold. She should ignore it. Should get on the train and leave. But what if it was Lewis, using a my burner phone? What if he needed help? Against every instinct screaming at her to run, Elisa walked toward the main entrance. She saw them immediately. Vincent and Anthony, the same men who'd taken her to Marcus. They stood near the doors, watching the crowd, searching for her. Elisa turned, headed the opposite direction, heart slamming against her ribs. She ducked into a bathroom, locked herself in a stall, tried to think. They knew she was here, knew about the train, which meant someone had talked, or they'd been watching her, or her phone rang. Louis, finally. "Where are you?" she whispered. "Still in the city. Listen to me carefully. They're at the station, I know. I'm watching the feeds." "Feeds?" "Security cameras. I have access. I can see Vincent and Anthony near the main entrance. There's another guy, tall, bald, tattoo on his neck, near the south exit. How am I supposed to get out?" "North service exit, staff only. It's near the Amtrak waiting area. I'm sending you a photo of the door. Go now, while they're watching the gates." Her phone buzzed with an image. A nondescript door marked, "Authorized personnel only." What if it's locked? It won't be. I have someone on the inside. Just walk out like you belong there. Confident. Don't run. Where do I go after? There's a parking garage 2 blocks north. Level 3, space 47. Silver Audi. Key is in the wheel well. Drive to the address I'm texting you. It's a safe house. I'll meet you there in 2 hours. Lewis. I love you, Elisa. Now move. She moved. Out of the bathroom, through the crowd, trying to look casual while her pulse hammered in her ears. The Amtrak waiting area was packed. She wove through families with suitcases, businessmen with briefcases, found the door Louis had photographed. Glanced back. Didn't see Vincent or Anthony. Pushed through the door. Alarms didn't sound. No one shouted. She found herself in a service corridor, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. The smell of floor cleaner and old concrete. Walked quickly, not running, until she hit an exit door that opened onto an alley. Cold air hit her face. Freedom. She found the parking garage, found the Audi, found the key exactly where Lewis said it would be. Got in, started the engine, and pulled out into Chicago traffic with shaking hands. The address Louis sent was for a house in Oak Park. Modest, suburban. Nothing like his penthouse. Elisa parked in the driveway, grabbed her bag and let herself in with the key Louis had texted the code for. Lockbox by the front door, code 4729. Inside, the house was empty but lived in. Furniture but no personal items. A safe house like he'd said. Probably used for exactly this kind of situation. Elisa sat on the couch and waited. 2 hours came and went. Then 3. Then 4. Her phone stayed silent. At hour 5, she started to panic. At hour 6, she called him. Voicemail. At hour 7, she saw the news. Breaking. Shooting on Chicago's south side. Multiple casualties. Police investigating possible mob connection. The screen showed a familiar street. A familiar building. Lombardi's social club. Elisa's hands went numb. The reporter was talking, but she couldn't hear over the rushing in her ears. At least 4 dead, including Marcus Carbone, alleged head of the Carbone crime family. Witnesses report hearing gunshots around 3 p.m. Police have not released names of other victims, but sources say... The screen cut to footage of body, bags being loaded into ambulances. Elisa's phone rang. FBI, the caller ID said. She answered with shaking hands. Miss Davis, this is Special Agent Sarah Chen with the FBI. We need you to stay where you are. A team is en route to your location. Where's Louis? A pause. Mr. Montana is in federal custody. He turned himself in approximately 2 hours ago and is cooperating with our investigation. Is he hurt? He's unharmed. Miss Davis, I need you to listen carefully. What happened today at Lombardi's? Mr. Montana was not involved. He was already in our custody when the shooting occurred. Do you understand? Elisa understood. Louis had an alibi. The FBI's protection had started the moment he walked into their office. But 4 people were dead. Marcus was dead. Someone had cleaned house, tied up loose ends. And Louis's hands were technically clean. We'll be there in 15 minutes, Agent Chen said. Pack anything you need for an extended stay. You're both going into protective oaths. Custody tonight. The line went dead. Elisa sat in the silent house, staring at the news, and wondered what Louis had set in motion. Wondered who'd pulled the trigger at Lombardi's. Wondered if he'd kept his promise not to kill anyone, technically, by having someone else do it. Wondered if she could live with loving a man who operated in those shades of gray. 15 minutes later, black SUVs pulled up outside, and Elisa's old life ended. 6 months later, Elisa woke up in a city she was still learning to call home. The apartment was small, 1 bedroom in a complex in Portland, Oregon, nothing like Louie's penthouse or even her old place with Mara. But it was clean, safe, and it was theirs. She rolled over, found Louis already awake, sitting on the edge of the bed with his back to her. Even in sleep clothes, gray t-shirt, boxers, he looked tense, always alert. Some habits died harder than others. Morning, she said softly. He glanced back, and his expression softened the way it only did with her. Morning. Did I wake you? No, I just have good timing. She sat up, wrapped her arms around him from behind, pressed her cheek against his shoulder blade. Bad dreams again? Same one. The club, the bodies. Louis hadn't been there when it happened, but he'd orchestrated it all the same, feeding information to Vincent, Marcus's own lieutenant, about a planned coup. Vincent had acted exactly as Louis predicted, eliminating Marcus and 2 loyalists before the FBI moved in. By the time the smoke cleared, Louis was already in federal custody with the perfect alibi, and the Carbone family had collapsed into infighting and arrests. Neat. Clean. And technically, Louis's hands were spotless, but they both knew the truth. You didn't pull the trigger, Elisa reminded him. The same words she'd repeated dozens of times over the last 6 months. I might as well have. You did what you had to do to get us out alive. Louis turned to face her, eyes searching hers for something. Absolution, maybe. Or permission to forgive himself. Do you really believe that? He asked. Or are you just saying it because you love me? Elisa thought about it. Really thought about it. About Marcus, who'd threatened her life with grandfatherly gentleness. About Vincent, who'd probably been planning his move for years and just needed the right push. About the world Louis had been trapped in since he was 17. A world built on violence, and loyalty and blood. I believe you chose me over everything, she said finally. I believe you found a way out when most people never do. And I believe the men who died. They knew the risks. They chose that life. You chose different. Because of you. No. Because of you. She cupped his face, forcing him to meet her eyes. I didn't make you want redemption, Louis. You already wanted it. You just needed a reason to believe it was possible. He kissed her then, slow and deep, like he was trying to memorize the taste of her. Forgiveness. They'd been through hell to get here. The first month in protective custody had been a nightmare. Constant debriefings, testifying before grand juries, learning their new identities. Louis was now Lucas Morgan, security consultant. Elisa was Lisa Morgan, his wife. They'd been given new social security numbers, new driver's licenses, a new history that was close enough to their real one to be believable. The hardest part had been leaving people behind. Elisa couldn't contact Mara, couldn't tell her she was alive and safe. The FBI said maybe in a few years, once the remaining Carbone associates had been sentenced or scattered. But for now, Elisa Davis was effectively dead. Only Lisa Morgan remained. Some days, that felt like too high a price. But then Louis would come home from his new job, legitimate security work for a tech company, boring and safe and legal, and smile at her like she'd saved his life instead of the other way around. And she'd remember why they'd done this. I have a surprise for you, Louis said, breaking the kiss. Good surprise or we have to move again surprise? He laughed. Good surprise, I promise. He led her to the kitchen, where he'd set up breakfast. Nothing fancy, just eggs and toast and coffee, but the effort was there. On the counter sat an envelope. What's this? Elisa asked. Open it. Inside was a letter. Acceptance letter, she realized as she scanned the contents. From Portland Community College. Nursing program. Louis. Her voice cracked. You start in the fall. I already paid the tuition. And before you argue about the money, I sold the restaurant I owned back in Chicago. Legitimate business, legitimate sale. This is clean money, Elisa. I promise. She looked up at him, eyes burning. You remembered. Of course I remembered. You said nursing school was your dream. Just because we had to start over doesn't mean you have to give up your dreams. Elisa set the letter down carefully before she crumpled it with her shaking hands. I don't know what to say. Say you'll go. Say you'll become the nurse who stays with people when they're scared. The one you told me about that first night. I'll go, she whispered. Thank you. They ate breakfast together as morning light filtered through the kitchen window. It was ordinary. Beautifully, perfectly ordinary. No bodyguards, no encrypted phones, no looking over shoulders. Just two people eating eggs and planning their day. After breakfast, Louis had to leave for work. He kissed her goodbye at the door. Another ordinary gesture that still felt miraculous. Love you, he said. Love you too. Be safe. Always am. She watched him drive away in their sensible used Honda. Nothing like the luxury cars he'd owned before, and felt something settle in her chest. Peace, maybe, or just the absence of constant fear. Elisa spent the morning cleaning their apartment, then walked to the coffee shop 3 blocks away where she worked part-time. The owner, Rita, was a 60-year-old former hippie who asked no questions about Elisa's sparse work history and paid in cash. Perfect for someone starting over. Morning, Lisa, Rita called from behind the espresso machine. You're early. Couldn't sleep. Luke is keeping you up? Rita winked. Elisa laughed. Not like that. Just excited about some news. I got accepted to nursing school. That's wonderful. We should celebrate. Drinks after your shift? Just coffee for me. But yeah, I'd like that. It was such a normal conversation. Such a normal life. 6 months ago, Elisa wouldn't have believed it possible. The day passed in a blur of lattes and customer small talk. When her shift ended, Elisa walked home through neighborhoods she was starting to recognize, past the park where she and Louis sometimes had picnics, past the bookstore where they'd spent an entire Saturday afternoon browsing. Louis was already home when she arrived, changed out of his work clothes into jeans and a sweater, chopping vegetables for dinner. "Hey," he said, looking up with that soft smile that was hers alone. "How was work?" "Good. Rita says congratulations on nursing school. The whole city's going to know by tomorrow. She's a talker. I like that about her. Makes things feel normal." Louis set down the knife, wiped his hands on a towel, and crossed to her, pulled her into his arms like he'd been waiting all day for this moment. "Is it enough?" he asked quietly. "This life, this small, quiet, ordinary life. Is it enough for you?" Elisa pulled back to look at him. Really look at him. He'd changed in 6 months. The tension he'd always carried had eased. The shadows under his eyes had faded. He smiled more, laughed more, slept better, though the nightmares still came sometimes. He looked like a man who'd finally stopped running. "It's everything," she said. "This is everything, Louis." "Lucas," he corrected gently. "Lucas," she amended, testing the name that still felt foreign on her tongue. "This is everything." They cooked dinner together. Pasta, nothing fancy, but Louis had taught her the recipe his mother used to make. Simple red sauce with fresh basil, garlic bread, a salad. They ate at their small table, talking about their days, making plans for the weekend. After dinner, they did dishes side by side. Louis washed, Elisa dried. The radio played softly in the background, some pop station they'd discovered together. "Dance with me," Louis said suddenly. "There's no good song playing. I don't care." He pulled her into the middle of their small kitchen, one hand on her waist, the other clasping hers. They swayed slowly, finding a rhythm that had nothing to do with the music. "I never thought I'd have this," Louis said into her hair. "Someone to cook with, to do dishes with, to just exist with." "Me either. Thank you." "For what?" "For kissing me in that bar. For staying when you should have run. For believing I could be more than what I was." Elisa looked up at him. "You were always more, Louis. You just needed permission to see it." He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her mouth. Soft kisses that tasted like promise and permanence. Later, lying in bed with Louis's arms around her, Elisa thought about the life she'd left behind. Mara, probably still wondering what happened. Her regular customers at Murphy's, the apartment with the broken radiator, all of it gone, sacrificed for this new beginning. Some days she missed it, missed the certainty of knowing who she was, where she belonged. But then Louis would hold her like this, like she was precious, like she was home, and she'd remember why she'd chosen this path. Because love wasn't just about the easy moments. It was about standing beside someone when they fought their demons. It was about believing in their potential to change. It was about building something new from the ashes of everything you'd burned down. And they were building something beautiful. "Elisa?" Louis's voice was drowsy in the darkness. She'd stopped correcting him when they were alone. Lisa was for the world. Elisa was for him. "Yeah?" "When we're old and gray and our kids ask how we met, what are we going to tell them?" Elisa smiled against his chest. The truth, that their mom made a $50 bet, kissed a stranger in a bar, and changed both their lives forever. "Think they'll believe it?" "Doesn't matter. It's our story. The best one I know." Louis's arms tightened around her. "I love you. I love you too." Outside, Portland rain pattered against the windows. Soft, gentle. Nothing like Chicago's harsh winters. But Elisa had learned that some things were worth the cold. Worth the fear and the risk, and the terrifying leap into the unknown. Because on the other side of that fear was this: warmth, safety, and a man who'd burned his entire world down just to build a new one with her. She closed her eyes and let sleep take her, dreaming of a future she'd once thought impossible. A future where the most dangerous man in Chicago became just Lucas. Just a man who'd found redemption in the arms of a woman brave enough to kiss strangers. Sometimes the people who save us aren't the heroes we expect. They're the broken ones who choose to be better. The dangerous ones who choose gentleness. The ones the world told us to fear. Who teach us that change is possible if you're willing to sacrifice everything for it. Louis Montana gave up an empire. Elisa Davis gave up her identity. And what they built from those ashes was worth every loss. Because redemption isn't about erasing your past. It's about choosing, every single day, to write a different future. Maybe that's what all of us are searching for. Not someone to save us, but someone worth saving ourselves for. Someone who sees our worst parts and loves us anyway. Someone who believes we can be better than we've been. And maybe, just maybe, we're all capable of that kind of transformation.